Welcome to our podcast series on African scientists at the University of Bern. I am Dr. Djouroukoro Diallo, coordinator of Initiative Afrique and associate researcher at the Center for the Study of Language and Society. Our guest today is...
I'm Tendai Muronzi, a postdoctoral researcher at Rhodes University in South Africa, part of the research unit in bioinformatics.
Welcome, Tendai. We're very happy to have you today for our interview. So how are you?
I'm very well, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Okay, nice. Very nice. So who is Tendai? Can you say something about yourself? Where are you from? What do you do?
Okay, so I am Zimbabwean, and I'm currently working as a researcher in South Africa. The journey there was, I would say, a bit long, but I did my undergraduate at the University of Zimbabwe in Harare in biochemistry. And from then, I pursued a master's in bioinformatics. Then I've pursued my PhD in bioinformatics. Right now, I'm doing an exchange, a research training exchange at the University of Bern for 2 months.
So you are doing exchange training in Bern.
Yes.
So in what exactly? Can you tell us? What kind of exchange is that? What kind of training in that is this? And how could you find the information to come to Bern?
Okay, so Rhodes University is part of a core GHA, which is clusters of research excellence and genomics in health in Africa. And as part of that consortium, Rhodes University in South Africa and Bern, and several other universities within Europe facilitate exchanges between researchers at these institutes. So in my case, a PhD student from the University of Bern came to Rhodes University in March, and I've done an exchange and I've come here for two months. So the people in play here are Professor Carmen Faso at the MCID here at University of Bern, and she also runs a unit at the Institute of Cell Biology. That is where I'm currently working. And back home in South Africa, the PI leading this would be Professor Oslam Tustan Bishop. I think you did ask, how do you come to participate in the exchange?
Yeah.
I guess first you need to be part of a university that's participating in the consortium. But there is an application online that you can go when you go to the core GHA website. So I am doing some training in protein purification. To explain, the lab that I work for back home, our research unit in bioinformatics, has a subunit that works in drug discovery. And in this unit, we simulate docking with known compounds or unknown compounds to hopefully identify potential drugs. What you do need to do is then biochemically validate this. And I'm training in the lab here to do that, because what we do there is mostly in silico.
Okay, this is too complicated for me because I'm not from the field, and I guess many people who are listening to us are not from the field. So just explain me as if you were talking to a child.
Okay.
So what are you doing in Bern?
What I'm doing in Bern is starting the process of replicating what we have done on the computer back home. And to replicate this process, you need some of the components we had in our simulation at home. One of these components being a protein.
let's talk about the way you embraced from like your undergraduate time as student to now as postdoc. I mean, it has been a journey from Zimbabwe. Where in Zimbabwe?
So I grew up in Bulawayo, which is, I think, the second largest city in Zimbabwe. But I then moved to Harare for my undergraduate in biochemistry.
So in Zimbabwe, from one city to another city, and from there to?
So I worked for about 2 years as a research assistant at a biotechnological firm. Then while I was there, I was trying to figure out the next step. And it so happened that my then undergrad supervisor had taught a course in bioinformatics. And she realized I had a keen interest in it. So she kept showing me applications, opportunities in bioinformatics, which is what then led to me to eventually applying to Rhodes University. That's in Grahamstown, Makanda now, for the master's in bioinformatics. And I suppose I've enjoyed it enough to carry on to do it in PhD. So I am based in South Africa now.
From Zimbabwe to South Africa, and from South Africa to Bern.
Yes.
And still very much interested in bioinformatics.
Very much still interested, but I would say because part of my background is still rooted in that biochemistry of doing experimental work in a lab, I am happy in a situation where I can do hybrid. So when the possibility of actually now expanding our work into actually doing some of the experimental work ourselves, I jumped on it because then I also get to call back on the skills I accumulated during my undergrad degree.
So let's come back to your stay in Bern. So what does it mean for you to have this opportunity? What does it mean for your career?
I think the obvious one would be there's been some skill acquisition. So I'm adding to the skill set that I already have in my career. But also it's provided an opportunity to network, to be able to have more collaborators. Because I am, I think, an early career researcher, and this is the time that you set the groundwork for the collaborations that you'll have later on in your career, or the things you'll build on. So that exchange has done that, and in as well, I think attaining outputs that I can take with me to grow the research I'm doing back home. So this feels like a good stepping stone, and also an insight into what research is outside of Africa, because research in Africa is all of known, and every once in a while you do get research from Europe who visits and tells you what they've done, but I don't think you get the full picture until you come here and you see how things are done differently.
What does it mean for you to be a scientist?
Mm-hmm.
And I like to stress the fact that you are a woman, African woman in science. What does it mean for you?
So that's a bit two-tiered. On a personal level, being an African woman in science has just allowed me to pursue some of my curiosities, right? But it's also, I think I've taken it on as a responsibility to be a voice in the room, because we already know a lot of scientific concepts have been established without women in the room, let alone African women in the room. So the margin gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and to get to be in a room, I think it's just my responsibility to make it count. It's been a bit, I wouldn't say fascinating, but interesting to me that obviously I've been conducting science in Africa this entire time. And you then feel like, oh, there's so many of us because I'm in Africa and there's more women in science there. In my current lab at the Research Unit in Bioinformatics, I'm not sure if it's by design, but there's more African women in the lab than there are men. And interestingly enough, all the way up, anyone who's been a supervisor or PI for me has been a woman. Not necessarily African, but woman nonetheless. And it's given me an idea of there's so many of us. But when I've then come here and I've realized in the department I've only seen so many faces, so many African women, then I don't know, I think that expands on a global stage to there's still that few African women in the room. And I think it's also all our responsibilities to raise awareness and make more people know that there's spaces up here.
Very interesting. So, how long have you been in Bern?
I think about 6 weeks now, because this day has been 2 months. I have more or less 2 weeks left.
Okay, 6 weeks. It means you know something about the city.
Yes, I tried to familiarize myself with the city within the first week of arriving.
Okay, what were your first impressions?
I thought it was small, which is not what I thought I would think, which I quite liked. The thing I liked, it feels like it's easy to escape into nature from the city. It felt friendly, it felt, maybe I would say cozy. It didn't feel like a big overwhelming city, like the idea you have when you think, I'm going to a European city, and you see all these images of big, busy, bustling Paris, Milan, Geneva, and here felt like you can take a breath, you can think. Like I said, within a week of being here, I was able to get myself to and from where I'm working and make detours with little consequence. So I think it's a lovely city. Lovely
city, small city. You can find your way easily.
Yes. What I also did find interesting is that the University of Bern is scattered all over the city. I was expecting it to be a singular campus, but I think that also makes the university feel like part of the city.
What else do you know about Switzerland, about the country, about the culture, about the languages?
Languages, I learned, I was very quickly told that Swiss German is different from High German. People were quick to correct me about that. But I'm not familiar with German. Now I, of course, recognize some words. Some of the words sound like what they mean, but that was a bit of a shock. Maybe shock is not the word, but I guess the language is always a bit of shock if you're used to passively understanding what people are saying and suddenly being in a room and realizing you don't know what people are saying. But I think nicely enough, most people do speak English, or they make the effort to meet you halfway. So communicating isn't that much of a problem. What do I know about Switzerland? I think you asked. I was very fascinated by the way the government is set up, where it's like the presidents, they change, is it every 2 years? Am I mixing that up? But it's like a council of governments from different parties.
Yes, it's a different political system.
Yes, it's very different from, I think, most of the political systems that I know. And clearly it works because everyone seems happy.
met during the night of the research.
Yes.
So what were your impressions?
The night of research was, it was quite impressive. I think that's how science outreach should be done, because I think the more stands I visited, I realized a lot of it was targeted towards younger children, and that's how you cultivate that. Unfortunately for me, a lot of the stands were in German, so I missed that, but I think that's also to connect to the younger generations, people who are still learning English, but they get to come here and realize how fascinating the science was. So it was quite impressive, and I think it's some ideas I'll take back home.
So we are at the end of our interview, but what would be your take-home message?
As the take-home message is also, there's so much more to learn. Because I think you, at a certain point, you specialize in your career and you think you've reached the top, and there's always more to learn. And maybe the take-home message is just staying aware of that. There's so much more to learn and keeping yourself open to learning.
Thank you very much, Tendai, for giving us some of your valuable time, and we still wish you a good stay in Bern and good travel back to South Africa.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.